Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Mike Force Podcast. I look forward to the Mike Force Podcast. I hope you guys do too. I like it because it's a opportunity for me to kind of consolidate the things that I'm working on for Mike Glover's show and content for Patreon and Substack. You know, my strategy is I want to give you big picture stuff in the short duration of time that I can on YouTube. And that's how the algorithm works, right? It optimizes for attention. But I like doing the long form, both free and on the paid side, of distilling the conversation, distilling what we're talking about, and also give you advice and education on anything I can, if I can. In some cases I can't, but in some cases I can. An interesting take, for example, I do a post on social. I do a YouTube video on Mike Glover's show on my YouTube channel, and I talk about arming firefighters. It's not a novel idea. I understand that. Some people completely disagree. It's interesting, the comments and the debate. One guy mentioned, well, if you give a firefighter a inside the waistband pistol or whatever, outside the waistband, whatever, and they're fighting a fire that's hundreds, if not thousands of degrees, well, it's going to cook off his ammo. And I'm like, well, I certainly hope nobody who's fighting fires is, one, carrying a pistol outside of their suit, but the suit that's protecting their body, and if that pistol is against their body, it's going to be fine. I mean, I've operated in Iraq at 130 degrees Fahrenheit on operations, and I imagine that's hot, but it's flame retardant. Like, you're not going to cook the person inside, and I don't think that ammo or that primer will cook off, but I don't know. Also, I didn't think that way. I didn't think firefighters, when they got off the fire truck, that they all were going to carry inside the waistband holsters, because they do have to get dressed and do their job, which is fighting fires. I thought, hey, just like a police officer would have a carbine in their trunk in a rifle bag, or a shotgun, they used to keep them near their center console locked up. That would be the idea. At least they had something on the truck, a go bag with a pistola in it, something. I think the debate for me, the argument for me is simple. As a private citizen of this country, you have an inherent right, as a law-abiding citizen, an inherent right to self-defense. So why would we limit your inherent right to self-defense because of your particular profession? And then when you looked at the hierarchy of professions, with the top or the tip being vulnerability to catastrophe or to something going bad, well, firefighters and EMS are at the top of that list. I mean, I wouldn't even put police officers at the top of that list, because at least they have the ability to defend and protect themselves. Another valid argument is that they're not trained. And for sure. But I want you to take a step back from that thought process, which is valid, but that's what training is for. Well, let's take a step back and say, well, what do law enforcement officers go through in their academy? The reality is, patrol academies, I've taught in patrol academies, firearm instruction and tactics is very limited and minimal. I mean, tactics in some cases are non-existent. I mean, sure, they'll go over standard operating procedures, but let me give an example. Small unit tactics, bounding and overwatch, support by fire, flank and maneuver, basic maneuvering to support one another with firearms. It's not taught. I mean, some advanced, I hate using the word advanced because it's basics, but I mean, I hate using the word progressive, but I'll use it here. Like some progressive departments who are thinking about their people. You might have a Marine or a former military guy or a former SWAT guy who goes, look, we need to train these guys on basic small unit tactics. But imagine you're a candidate, and you're in the police academy and you've never touched a firearm before. When you leave the academy and you go to do with your field training officer, your on-the-job training, you're expected to protect, defend, and do a lot of difficult things that I have been required to do because of my job in the military and even the CIA as someone who used to protect case officers overseas. And I think about the entry-level person, the entry-level human being that goes into an academy who comes out. Are they prepared for the challenges that police officers face? The answer is no. That's the purpose of field training officers, to kind of OJT them. On-the-job training and experience is how they understand the job for real. Because everything is theory in training. It's not until you hit the streets and you experience it for real that you understand the totality or severity of the job you're doing. So you might be a patrol officer who's never touched a firearm, who goes through 4 weeks during a 15-plus week academy, depending on where you're at. Shorter than that for a lot of places. You get in a situation on your first day on the job, depending on where you're located. I can tell you, if you're in a densely populated or highly populated city, likely you're going to encounter this, but you run into a situation where you draw down on somebody and you potentially have to use deadly force out the gate. Or, worse yet, you have to thread the needle. You got a good guy you're trying to rescue and a bad guy you have to engage. That's difficult for the most elite professionals in counterterrorism. I can't imagine for somebody who months ago never touched a pistol, which is even harder, and now they have a pistol, they're shaking in their boots, and they have to make a rapid decision that's going to save their life and likely the lives of innocent civilians. That's a lot of pressure. I say that to also say many professions we've had this conversation. It's been in an open forum for decades. Teachers, should they be armed? The first inclination is, oh my God, you're going to have somebody armed around children? Well, not just like they go to the gun store, pick up a weapon, and they take it into a classroom and start flagging everybody. No, they need training. They need gun handling skills. They need self-defense training. They need stress inoculation. They need to understand the law. They have a standard operating procedure and specific things that they can and can't do via the institution, allowing them to carry. And those considerations are weighed by mostly lawyers who are looking at liability. And one of the reasons that's a problem is because often these institutions, these government institutions, weigh liability over people and their safety. The thought originally with this Coeur d'Alene shooter, this 20-year-old kid, I mean, he's a kid, who ironically wanted to be a firefighter, who hid up in the mountains, who set a fire to bait in the firefighters. It was initially reported that a sniper was allegedly taking shots from a concealed position, which at some point might have been the case. But from now or recent reports, they're stating that firefighters, including the battalion chiefs that were killed in the conduct of doing their job, heroes. Two men that have been on the job for decades, have committed everything to protecting people, putting out fires, being a pillar of their community, that have families, that could have retired but didn't, show up and get killed in close proximity. I don't know how close, but they said they had made contact with the suspect, and it wasn't like it was advertised where you thought, I thought, based on how they were saying it, there was a sniper with a rifle hiding in a barricaded position in the woods. So that's a horrible situation to be in. I pray for the victims, families, and the injured firefighter who's fighting for his life. It's tragic. But it's like, what can we learn from this? And how, moving forward, can we avoid this catastrophe from happening again? Now, part of the thing that frustrates me is listening to one of the firefighters who broke contact, who's hiding behind a fire engine for cover, and he's asking for help from dispatch. He's also telling them very calmly, he's not panicked, what's going on, the casualties they have, and that this is an ambush. He has the wherewithal to identify it as an ambush, and he's super smart. But I thought to myself, how irresponsible of us as institutions, as citizens, to not give these EMS and firefighting first responder heroes the ability to defend themselves in harm's way. Now, is being in harm's way the everyday interaction of their job? No. You know, they go to scenes of accidents that have already transpired. But imagine you're a firefighter, you're first on scene, and you show up at an accident at 2 a.m, and there's a drunken person in a vehicle who might be armed. And then you go to help them, and they pull a gun. That's not fiction. That happens all the time. Firefighters and EMS professionals that are first responders at the tip of the spear arriving to the scene often arrive to the scene before police or sheriff deputies arrive to the scene. And that's just whoever gets there first gets there first. My take, though, is we should never put professionals that have to go through a lot of arduous training. I mean, the fire academy, I used to live by Cal Fire in Ione, California. It's a commitment. It's a difficult undertaking. If they have the aptitude, the intelligence to get through that, to deal with the stress of fire rescue and all the trauma and all the resilience through adversity they're going to have, then why can't we arm them? I mean, a concealed carry course takes a weekend. 2 days of training and you're good to go. I have trained people in a 5-hour block of basic pistol who never touched a firearm before. And at the end of the day, about 3/4 of the way in, these people, these inexperienced people who have never touched a firearm are running and gunning. Oh my God. No, that's just how it works. Especially if they don't have any bad habits. We don't have to unlearn things. If they're showing up, they have an open mind, they're willing to follow the instruction, and they're paying attention to detail, they'll be running and gunning by the end of the day, easily learning the basics of self-defense, the principles of self-defense, the fundamentals of marksmanship, and then some stress inoculation. It's not hard. I want firefighters and EMS to have protocols for options. I'm not saying every one of them should have a firearm. If I think about that, even as it relates to, for example, teachers, I think about my own teachers, and there's many who, if they were armed, would be a high liability to the safety of everybody around them. Just as not everybody's capable of managing stress, carrying a firearm in civilian life, there's also institutions where you have people who just, I don't know, maybe they failed the test. Maybe there's a requirement. You want to carry a firearm just like a airline pilot because of what happened on 9/11? You have to do the training. And what's wrong with that? I just mean them having the option and not being constrained because of a lawyer reducing liability for the institution is unacceptable. Firefighters hiding behind their engine with no options to address a threat that's becoming more prevalent in our society is not an option. It's also the same reason I talk about you responsibly carrying and not forgetting or not neglecting your inherent right to self-defense. Many of you listening to this podcast might not carry at all. And there's reasons why you don't carry. And I would simply state, what happens if tomorrow's the day? What happens if tomorrow, not just with you, but tomorrow's the day that you're going to have to defend your family's life? And your fist, your kung fu, your military experience and status, your jiu-jitsu, whatever it may be, is not enough, because the difference between life and injury and death is that weapon system that doesn't discriminate against evil people when you're defending yourself and your family's life. What if tomorrow's that day? Then if you survive it miraculously, will you listen and go, yeah, I should have listened. Yeah, I'm gonna. You gave me the first chance. You gave me the warning. I didn't pay attention. So, yeah, definitely for sure I'm going to carry. What does it take? It's like the seatbelt, right? You don't wear a seatbelt because you're like, I don't need a seatbelt. I don't like the way it feels. And then you get in an accident and your head cracks the windshield and you almost die. Then for the rest of your life, you take the time to put on that seatbelt. You communicate to everybody, safety first, including your kids. You teach everybody the importance of wearing the seatbelt. You might write a book. You do a seminar. You start a Patreon and talking about how important it is to wear your seatbelt. Well, guess what? In a gunfight, or somebody who's hell-bent on evil or malice intent and hurting you or your family, there is no takebacks. I've driven down the road on a motorcycle before and went, oh crap, I'm not carrying, and flipped a U-turn, came back and picked it up, because I'm not taking the chance. I am not taking the chance. It is a constitutional right, and it is an inherent right as a citizen of this country. You have that right to self-defense, and you better exercise it. Why do you think some people get injured? Some people get killed by people who are hell-bent on doing evil things? Because they're looking to exploit vulnerabilities. I tell women all the time, you can't afford not to carry. You get a guy like me, 240 pounds, who's monkey stomping your butt, that is a bad position to be in. A 100-pound woman with all the karate, with all the belts, I don't care how many stripes you have on your black belt, you are not going to stop a heavier person from inflicting major injury and potential death to you if you don't have that one tool that separates the 100-pound female from the 240-pound male or female. And there are no second chances. Something else I talked about, and I put this on my Patreon, I did an actual scenario. By the time you hear this podcast, this scenario will be available for you on youtube.com at Mike Glover Stories, which is the unedited kind of version of my channels. And every once in a while, I cross-promote a Patreon post that I give to them, at least my paid members, free. Well, my paid members get it because they pay, but then I offer it to you guys for free. And I did a segment on this decision point concept. It's a concept because I haven't seen it. I teach it, and I've taught it before for Philcraft. I think I'm going to encourage Philcraft to teach it in the future as well. I'd love to teach that. It's a simunitions force-on-force based course that's based on scenarios. A lot of people, most people, focus on the technical script of drawing the pistol, hitting the target. You know, your focus for your self-defense training is on that technical running the gun. Well, that's nice, but that's like one sliver of the pie. Actually, like 1/10 of the pie. The timeline that initiates is like when you make contact with a person all the way to the end to when the police potentially clean up the mess and you go to jail in handcuffs, or you go home to your family, or you go home in a body bag. Those are your three options. And so there are a lot of things in the lead up that lead to this tipping point that I talk about. Malcolm Gladwell has this book called Tipping Point. It's a good read. I have a book that we talk about this called Prepared, a manual for surviving worst case scenarios, which I'll link down below where you could buy it, or better yet, listen to it, that talks about this. There is something significant right before the tipping point. The tipping point is the point in which there is no return. Once you start snowball rolling downhill, there is no return. The question is, what is your ethical, moral, decision-making process, critical thinking skilled process for activating the switch to use deadly force and commit to it? Well, what do you mean, Mike? Like when somebody's threatening me or my family? It's not that easy. Yeah, sure, the legal jargon will outline the adopted script that you should regurgitate, but what I'm saying is like, what's the actual line for you in the sand? What do you mean? Let me articulate it a little bit better. Somebody's standing at your door with a firearm by their side, and you open the door and you have your pistol because it's midnight. You see them, what do? Well, I shoot them. Okay, do you? You haven't identified who they are. You haven't told me anything or asked me a question about their demeanor. You just pick up your pistol and shoot them? Yeah, I ain't taking chances. Okay, well, that'd be problematic. Well, why would it be problematic? Well, because you would go to jail or prison for the rest of your life. Because likely, if you haven't gone through the OODA loop of understanding and comprehending what you're seeing in front of you, and you just take it like you take a target on a flat range that's so conveniently placed right in front of you, then you will go to prison for the rest of your life. The situation in Salt Lake City with this guy who grabbed the AR, he's pointing it at the ground. He's moving to the protest after pulling it out of a bag. A guy misidentifies him and thinks that he's going to create a mass casualty event. He asks him to stop. He doesn't stop. The guy doesn't likely listen. He shoots, engages him, and then misses with a second round out of the total 3 rounds he fired and kills an innocent person. Who's at fault? The guy didn't positively, he identified a potential threat, but he didn't positively identify that potential threat. And what he perceived wasn't an actual threat. How do I know? Well, the dude Gamboa wasn't charged with the crime. District attorney in Salt Lake City decided not to charge him because he had done this before, protesting. Oh, and the firearm he was carrying was empty. And I also say this because I've seen a lot of scenario-based self-defense training where people have an idea because they're used to draw stroking the pistol sub-second, where they immediately default to doing that, to drawing it, where they didn't use any tactics like mitigating or reducing risk by trying to communicate, de-escalate. And instead, they just go right to the pistola. Here's a great example. I have a scenario where, and I'm telling you this scenario because I'll never run this particular scenario again, but I saw it a dozen times over the course of a year or two, probably 18 months. You have a husband and wife team, and I typically team up a man and a woman, and they might be strangers to each other. If they're a couple, even better, because there's an actual moral obligation there. to protect and defend your loved one, especially male to female. So in this scenario, I have the role player come out and he doesn't have a firearm. Sometimes he does, but in this scenario, he doesn't. And the scenario is the man and woman come out of the gym and they're walking through the parking lot to their vehicle. They have a gym bag. And the woman is carrying the gym bag. And what I tell the bad guy role player to do is pretend that he's trying to get into the bag, but he's asking for food. I don't want him to physically make contact, but I want him to reach towards the female. And I don't want him to verbally communicate a threat. I just want him to say, hey, you got food? You got food? What do you got in the bag? What do you got in the bag? I'm hungry. I can't eat. And as soon as I do that scenario, 9 out of 10 times, Andy Stump has seen this because we've done this course in Montana, in Kalispell. Every single time, 9 out of 10 times, the male who's carrying the pistol, I don't give the pistol to the female, I give it to the male, he immediately tells the person to stay away. And if the role player gets in between him and his female partner or his spouse, the dude immediately draws the pistol, and then most of the time, probably 7 out of the 10 times, 9 out of 10 he draws the pistol, 7 out of 10 times he shoots the person mostly in the back because their back's turned to him. They might even not even look at angles or their back stops. Some of them get angles, but they engage them. Then I stop the scenario. I act sometimes as a police officer who's arriving on scene, or I have somebody else, like an actual officer, come in, sometimes in uniform, and ask the questions they would ask of the person who just fired the weapon about what happened. And what we get often is they think they're justified by all means. And then when you ask all the students who are watching behind plexiglass, because it's simunitions based, we're actually shooting projectiles. When you ask those students, who here thinks that murder was committed? Like murder was committed or manslaughter was committed. Either or. Everybody raises their hand. It's very rare for somebody not to raise their hand because they see what happened. When you ask the shooter, they perceive it like, no, I was defending my loved one. Okay? At any point, did that person threaten your life? No. At any point, did you see that person with a weapon? No. At any point, did that person make contact with your spouse? The answer is no. And this is all on purpose, obviously, but that happens. Also, most of the time, I would say half the time, when you ask the person who shot to defend their loved one how many times they shot, they don't know. They don't know if it was 3 times, if it was 5 times. I've had guys shoot 10 times and think it was a couple rounds. I say, hey, do you remember where you shot him? Yeah, in his chest. You shot him in his back. Oh, and your spouse was right behind the person. Oh, you don't believe me? Here's a camera because we record all the scenarios. So the mix of the adrenaline, the cortisol, all these elements create the perfect recipe for people who are defending life that are not training on the right things. And that's the lesson learned. You carry, it's a responsibility, you better train. I don't care if you're a firefighter or a private citizen. Tell me what you guys think. If you're interested in further education, my patreon.com/Mike Glover is down below. Also, my Substack is just under Mike Glover as well. I appreciate you guys. I also just posted a new Land Cruiser build, episode 1, into my triple lock 1996 FZJ80. I'm really excited about this series because I talked about it last week in mobility, but I'm building this out and showing you the process, which I don't think I've done before. Most of the time, I already have it complete, but this time I'm walking you through each step of the build. Tomorrow, I'm taking it to a dry ice facility and getting the undercarriage sprayed with dry ice to remove the surface rust so I can recoat it. Super exciting series because I geek out with everything overland and mobility. Also did a homestead walk-around update for you guys that are interested in that. That's on my main YouTube channel, at Mike Glover Channel. I appreciate you guys. Till next time, peace out.